welcome. I'm very happy to join and to talk about legal innovation. My name is Olivier Chaduteau. I'm the managing partner of Day One, which is a management consulting firm specialized in legal and compliance. We work with big corporate functions, legal department, compliance department, risk functions, and also professional service firms, mainly law firm, audit firms, and other consulting firm. I would like to talk about digital transformation in the legal industry, as I just finished a PhD last year in 2020 in economics, dealing with legal transformation of the legal industry and legal function. So I would like to share a few insights that I analyzed during this 4.5 years of PhDs. Just to be precise, I'd like to come up with two different economic theories that I use. I use the Harvard paradigm, which is the SCP paradigm, the structure, conduct, and performance of an industry. That's number one. And I analyze 15 years to look at the numbers and the trends and to see what's happening in the market in terms of supply and demand. And I also use the other paradigm, other theory in economics, which is called the transaction costs, which is a theory that was developed by the Nobel Prize Coase and Williamson. So I would like to give you some insight on the results of this research and see how the market is moving and what are the trends and what the impact on digital transformation. So first of all, when you look at a market and you look through the structure of a market, you look supply and demand, this is what I did. And during 15 years, the number one result is, first of all, in 15 years, the market doubled its size. So it's the increase was basically 94%, so it's basically 100%. So it doubled the size of the turnover. That's number one. But when you're an economic, you also look at the concentration of the different actors within an industry. So when we look at this market, we look at the top 100 firm in the market, and what is interesting suddenly is that at the beginning of this analysis, 15 years ago, at the very beginning, the top 20 firm were the part of the top 20 firm were 68% of the total market. And at the end, after 15 years, the size of the top 20 firm were only 57. So when you look at concentration, the C1, C2, C4 concentration, you had in 2003, you had to take the first 10 firm to get 51% of the market. 15 years after that, the first 10 firms were only 37 of the market. You had to go with more firm. So you had more and more firm. The size was increased. The critical size of the market of the firm also increased. And what is interesting is that the number of people within the law firm, 100 and 200 lawyers, multiplied by 2.4. So it's exactly the size of a firm that in a market specifically double the size. So the critical size of the market of the law firm of the market increase. That's number one. The number two, which is quite interesting, that double the size of the market in 15 years. But when you look at this period, you had one specific period, which is called the Subprime Crisis, right? So during 2008, 9, 10, and even 11, there was a crisis, economic crisis, as you all know, in every single industry. What's amazing is that during that period, the market didn't go down. It was flat for 4 years. So when you look at this market, it's either growing or going flat and then growing, never goes down. When you look at the macro level, that's quite interesting. Doesn't mean that there were no problem and decrease of some firm and some even went bankrupt, as you know, if you know the legal industry. But was it amazing in terms of economics at a macro level? This market, the legal industry, goes up or goes flat when there is economic problems. Because what? Because of the counter cycle of the practices, whether you do M&A or whether we do restructuring or whether we do litigation, or whether we do employment law, and etc. So the firms that were very well balanced in terms of practices were moving flat and not going down. So that was quite interesting. So again, go up, flat, up, never down. That's another story that is quite interesting in this when analyzing this legal industry in 15 years. The other thing that happened during this period is that we have new entrants, two different types of entrants. First of all, in every countries, you looked at there were very small. I said that the size increased, but there were very small niche firms that entered the market, specialized in litigation, specialized in IP, specialized in employment, specialized in tax, etc. And why was it possible that suddenly, while the size of the incumbent was going up, that some very small firms, sometimes 5 lawyers, 10 lawyers, 12 lawyers, were able to enter that market and serve the big corporation? It's because something happened that is very specific. It's because the incumbent, the firm in place, were looking for profit and profit and profit. So they were looking at what we call in the market the PPP, profit per partner, and they increased a lot the profit per partner, increasing not only the hourly rates for associates and also for partners, but also increasing the number of hours, the number of chargeable hours they wanted to do, whether you're an associate or whether you're a partner. So by increasing the pricing, they were able to suddenly give a space where new entrants at a lower price were able not only to enter that market at a lower price, but they were able to enter that market at a price that was way above their minimum average cost. So when you enter a market, first of all, you get costs, right? So if suddenly the price is impossible to go up, you got a problem because your cost is exactly like the price or even more than the price. But if the price of your competitors are like this, and your costs are here, you get all this space where you can position your price. So they were able to enter that market, providing sometimes 20, 25, 30% discount on their hourly rates. So the entry to that market was very easy for them because they were coming from the big law firm. So lots of partners left those law firms to create their own niche firm. So that was the trend that was very interesting in many jurisdictions around the world. The second trend, second new entrance, and I'm going now on digital transformation. It was the new entrance called the LegalTech or RegTech. You know, those specific vendors or specific providers that were using technology to deliver legal services. And when you look also at this market, and basically it really started in 2014, 2015, even though you had some vendors before, but the term legal tech started at that time and went up, and you had lots of creation. You get more than 2,000 legal techs around the world. It's amazing. So at that time when I did the analysis, basically what's quite interesting that you could have 3 different types of legal tech. Number one, which was during this period, again, 55% of the legal tech that were created were what we call on the delivering side. They were able to help deliver legal services, whether it was contract automation, whether it was clause management, whether it was contract audit. They were really working on the delivery part of the legal service delivery model. That's number one. 30% of those firms were on the sharing part of the model, which is your platform, where you can have a platform that allow you to put a client in front of a lawyer. So you go through a platform, you answer a few things, and suddenly you're in contact with the law firm or with the lawyers. So 30% of those legal tech were dedicated to sharing or to create platform actually. And the last part were around 12% of those legal tech were on what we call the decision-making part of this market, where they were looking at predictive justice. They were looking at developing algorithm around statistics, probability, and etc. to use the open data and use this data to try to predict the future. Even though that sounds weird to predict the future with data of the past, but they were looking at statistics and probabilities, I would say, and that's quite interesting to look at this trend also. The other 4% to make it 20% was other and was not analyzed interesting in this work. So that's quite interesting. But what is also interesting is that you remember law firm were going up, niche firm were going up, legal tech were going up. So all this offering, all this supply part of the market was going up. If you look at the demand, and I looked at the legal department and the in-house lawyers, it was also interesting to notice that there was also going up in this period because corporations were hiring more and more people within their legal function and legal department. So you also had more and more people dealing with legal matters and compliance matters all day long. So when you look at the entire industry from a supply and demand perspective, from a structure, everything was going up. Everything is going up. Whether you are in-house, whether you're outside, whether you are LegalTech, this is growing and everything is growing. So the supply goes with the demand, and it's working all together. It's not because you get more in-house lawyers that you get less work for outside counsel. It's even the contrary, because you get more in-house counsel that you get more possibility and opportunities for outside counsel, LegalTech, on other alternative service providers, for instance. So that was quite interesting to notice that, and this is one of the results that I saw. The other situation when you look at economics and market was the what we call the the information theory, which was around the asymmetry of information. Long time ago, when you had no in-house lawyers, the power was in the hand of the outside counsel, because they were the only one who had the knowledge, the legal knowledge. In-house, you had nobody. You had only business people. You had no lawyers internally. So the power was on the supply side, because they had the knowledge, the legal knowledge. So they were able to price or to advise or to say whatever they want to their clients. Because of that shift, the in-house counsel movement, which was very interesting, and that started during the 90s, in the last centuries, suddenly we had a shift in the asymmetry of information. The demand side, so the client side, had more information about what a lawyer should or should not do. Were able to analyze, to criticize, to evaluate the offering, the solution, the services that was provided by the supply. So there was a shift in the power. The power now is more in the hand of the in-house lawyers that do have the relationship with the outside counsel. So in terms of interaction, interdependency, in terms of evolution of the relationship between the supply and the demand, that's quite interesting. But what happened also was what I call the double breakthrough, or the double disruption. The double disruption, which is quite interesting, again in this market, is from one side the regulatory disruption, and on the other side the technology or digital disruption. On the first side, regulatory disruption as a whole is not only get increase in terms of laws, regulation, soft laws, etc., which is again creating more opportunities for legal professionals, but it was also the increase of extraterritorial activities, where, as you all know, it's not because you have subsidiaries in the US that their laws applies to you. It's enough for you to have a bank account in the US and it can apply to you. It's enough. It's sufficient or enough for you to just try to make business in dollars, and then some of their laws can apply to you. So that was quite interesting to look at this regulatory disruption, because it was in terms of amount of regulation, soft laws, hard laws, norms, and etc. And the extraterritorial new trend that was coming from the States, but that is also coming from other countries now. That's number one. Number two, and then I would like to focus the rest of my conference here on digital transformation, is about this digital disruption. Basically, the innovation of digital tools, the innovation of artificial intelligence, meaning machine learning, deep learning, reinforcement learning, or natural language processing, created this new artificial intelligence, which is what we look at in terms of economics. We look at that and we call that a GPT, a general purpose technology, which means that basically a GPT will impact every single industry, changing their business model, and changing the way people work and the way people can interact with each other. So this AI, this new AI, not the former one, this new AI, machine learning, natural language processing, was as a stage of maturity where they were able to impact every single industry, and not only the legal industry, as you all know. When you go to this legal industry, back again, it was the second big transformation. Again, the first one was what was called the Inhouse Council movement, which was created like at the beginning of the 90s. That was the first revolution. And what's quite interesting is that by just internalizing their in-house function, the corporation were decreasing or reducing the transaction costs of their organization. So that was the first phase of internalization, the in-house council movement. The second phase, and this phase is very interesting because it also can reduce not only the cost internally, but also the transaction costs, ex ante and ex post, is the digital transformation of that market. The digital transformation of that market basically is about to stop this increase of FTEs internally. So there have been this increase of in-house lawyers for the last 20 years. This is going to stop and until the next cycle, of course, and stop the number of people. The amount of work is increasing a lot. This is the regulatory disruption. The amount of work is increasing. The amount of people needs to go flat because you cannot double the size of your legal department, legal function, or corporate inspection every 5 years. That's impossible. And why is it possible? Because you are using digital tools. Now, because of the crisis, people are going to also look to decrease the budget with lawyers. But again, if get more regulation, more laws, more norms, and etc., it's difficult to say no to this, and you have to. So that's a market that is always growing, as I said. But because you have to choose what you need to do, suddenly the legal professional needs to look at the different matters of what they do and look at what I analyze, which is not the matters, not the project, but the tasks of the project. So it's really that new trend that was introduced by the digital transformation, which is the unbundling legal services, which is basically you don't look at a contract and you say this contract can be done by a lawyer. You look at a contract and then you unbundle the contract, looking at tasks within a contract. So to be more concrete, for instance, we did some analysis 10 years ago about a distribution agreement in the pharma industry, and we analyzed that this distribution agreement is basically 60 tasks, from the instruction of the lawyer to the signature and to the end and the management of that contract. You get 60 tasks. So what is interesting is that by looking at those tasks, you're asking yourself, okay, who or what should be performing that task? Who, it could be a human, what, it could be a machine. And this is what is quite interesting. When you look at this industry, usually when you get something to do, it's what we call the make or buy analysis. So let's say that you're a general counsel of a big corporation, you create your department, you know the strategy of the organization, you try to have competencies internally. What you're going to do is I'm going to say very simple. You say, I'm going to hire those people with these competencies. What I can do, I do it internally. What I cannot do or can't do or don't know to do, I will outsource. This is the make or buy analysis. And what I prove or what I measured in this thesis and in the study that I did, and statistically, is that this make or buy analysis, which was the first way to look at your organization, now is becoming, and the first lens, I would say, is becoming a second lens. The first analysis that you need to do is ask yourself whether this work could be done by a human being or by a machine. So you look at going back to this distribution agreement of 60 tasks, and you're asking yourself, who's going to perform that? You're going to look at those tasks and task by task, ask yourself, is it a human? Is it a machine? Is it a human? Is it a machine? And then you will be able to suddenly automate lots of tasks. Let's say 50% of the tasks. So 30 tasks will be performed by the machine. 30 tasks will be performed by a human. And then you will ask yourself the make or buy analysis. So we say, okay, this is done by the machine, this by a human. Okay, among those tasks, is it a make or is it a buy? So that's quite a shift in the way you are working your organization, the way you're looking at things that needs to be performed. And of course, having in mind that the most important thing is that you work with the business and you are here to manage the risks. Okay, so when I look at the numbers and when I try to measure task by task, that was quite interesting to look at that, and it was really important to define the different tasks. So I didn't look at thousands of tasks. I look at 18 macro tasks, I would say, whether it was on contract, whether it was on advice, whether it was on litigation, whether it was administrative work, and etc. And by working with in-house lawyers and do some statistics around that with a large amount of people, I was able to show that if you implement digital tools in a legal function in a corporation, you are able to decrease the number of administrative work by 40%. So if you look at the administrative work and you do this unbundling exercise and you do this machine versus human exercise, you are able to decrease by 40% the task that is performed by your team. That's number one. Number two, when we look at contract management, we were able to measure and to prove that if you also look at the task and perform this unbundling legal services of every single contract you're performing and looking at digital transformation, meaning what is the maturity in terms of tools, in terms of automation, in terms of AI, we were able to prove that we can decrease by 25% the amount of work that is performed by the in-house lawyers or by the outside counsel, depending on where you implement the tool. So that was very, very interesting. On the other side, it was more difficult to decrease and to find what? To find digital solution where the value of the lawyers are, which is quite interesting because at the end, we were able to show that 5 very specific services from lawyers were the very core services there where lawyers were bringing lots of value, where we wanted to have, human brain for judgment call, creativity, experience, ethics, and etc. And those 5 things were advice on giving legal advice. So it's really not doing the analysis, but being able to give advice, to give legal and strategic advice. That was number one. The number 2 was being able to find the right strategic litigation strategic advice. So it's really to define the strategy of litigation. So again, it was not the part of analyzing a few things, analyzing data and etc., but being able to looking at this, what's happening, being able to define the strategy of litigation. That was number 2. Number 3 was how you can really collaborate, and even I would say try to develop smart collaboration with in-house lawyers, stakeholders internally, and outside counsel to create value. So it was really the interaction with all those stakeholders internally and externally for litigation. That was number 3. Number 4 were about contract management, but about negotiation. So it was not about writing contracts. We're not about reviewing contract. We're not about designing clauses, etc. Because this is something that needs to be done upfront on templates and etc. It was really we need lawyers to negotiate contracts. So basically, lots of the maturity of the contract is the standard, but I need a lawyer to really negotiate this particular clause or this particular clause and be able to write that clause in a way that is acceptable from the third party, whether it's a supplier or whether it's a client. So negotiation was key, and the last one was in the analysis of the litigation. So by looking at the tasks that were that could be performed by the machines, thanks to artificial intelligence, we were able to decrease the number of tasks to save time for lawyers so they can focus on the high-value work, which are basically the 5 topics I just mentioned. So that was quite interesting to look at how digital transformation can help lawyers really focus on high-value work. What I also find out in this analysis is that it's not about destroying employment or destroying lawyers or the end of lawyers, as I read. It's more about changing the lawyering, changing the way lawyers work, the new ways of working. So it's not the end of lawyers; it's the end of the lawyers that were working in a certain way that was great. In the other paradigm, in this new paradigm where digital is key, it's not the end of lawyer, it's the beginning of the digital lawyer, where we'll have a lawyer working with digital to provide value and to provide quality. The next step is where not only we'll be able to use digital to perform automation, to perform faster than the human some tasks. It will be where lawyers can also use data analytics so that they can have high value work performed by the digital tools. That's very very important to make a difference between the machine and the human in this legal industry. There are four things that I've been looking at. First, it's the speed. The machine can move faster, way faster, way faster in certain situation than a human. So whenever you find a task or analysis, something where you say, well, it will be done faster by a machine, you will go for a machine. That's number one. Number two, the fact that a machine is looking at everything from A to Z, the exhaustivity of the analysis. When you're a human, you look at, for instance, a contract. If you get tired, suddenly you forgot a paragraph or you just mix a word. And if it's 1 a.m. in the morning because you're doing due diligence, maybe you're not looking at everything. If you take a machine 24/7, if we look from the first letter to the end of the letter and analyze everything, the exhaustivity will be performed by a machine. Number three is about data. If you take a contract, what is a contract at the end of the day? It's the addition of data, legal data, business data, financial data, technical data. The machine is able to, if we segment and unbundling those, is able to work with data and then suddenly get this data to this other function or to this other database and etc. and work on the data governance, which will go faster so that people don't end the same information in different databases. So that's also something that is interesting. And the last thing that can help you and can help the lawyers do is collaboration, smart collaboration. I mentioned that smart collaboration is key, but with the machine, it's easier to do because you can have platform where lawyers, in-house lawyers, outside counsel, internal stakeholders, external stakeholders can collaborate together in a smart way for this particular project or this particular situation. So that's very important that we look at those things. So at the end, this is my final comment here of this analysis of digital transformation. The thing that I saw at the end is that we need to see that digital is not against the human, and human cannot be against the machine. They all need to work together to perform a more efficient, really more efficient service to their clients and to the society. So now the main focus on the lawyer's side, which is now to look at what they need to do in terms of three different categories. The first is, of course, is risk management. So never forget that whatever you do, whether you automate things, we need to make sure that this is here to manage risks, because this is very important to bring consistency. Also, that is very important. The second thing is, because you can use automation, it will save you time so that you can try to spend more time on legal innovation. So it's about risk management, but it's also about innovation, and that's very key that there are these two things in a market that is moving very fast with lots of uncertainty and new rules, new laws every single day. And the last thing where I think that digital is also helping lawyers is to help to manage reduce the transaction cost that inevitably are in every single organization. So it's not only by looking at what could be done internally or externally, it's also what could be done in a different manner, where we can decrease not only the organization cost, but also the transaction cost. So the final thing that I looked at was those three things are the key performance areas where lawyers can bring more value than any other people in the world, which is again risk management, legal innovation, and transaction cost. Thank you very much for listening. I hope it was very helpful. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.